Fate Be Changed, Chapter 10, Elinor. The fire that crackled in the library's hearth had doubled in size, making the room stuffier than usual. Elinor itched to leave, but she had been at her lessons for only a short time. There was no way Queen Katerina would release her from this private hell so soon. Of course, her mother did not consider this hell, but rather the most important aspect of her daughter's life. And because Elinor's success reflected her mother's tutelage, the queen would not settle for anything less than perfection. She believed the future queen must be adept in all manner of languages, geography, and a dozen other things Elinor would never use if she were to be merely someone's wife. "I do not understand why I must know how to speak the old language of Northumbria," Elinor said. "It is hardly used anymore. Besides, I will never set foot on the soil in Strathclyde or Galloway or any of the other places where it was spoken. You and father have made sure of that." "Because you are a princess, and you must show that you are knowledgeable about the history and languages of all areas of this country, not just your own," her mother replied. "It does not matter that you will never go there." Except the area that made up the ancient kingdom of Northumbria was exactly the place Elinor had in mind as she planned her escape. The vast lands that made up the southern tip of Scotland were known for their beauty, and the people were known for their intellect. Every book she read in the past 2 years had come out of that area. Even after the Danes had tried to suppress the cultural life when they invaded in the previous century, the spirit of the scholars and the artists would not be denied. Elinor longed to explore it all. Her mother continued to lay out the various lessons on Elinor's schedule for the day. Between her language lessons, music lessons, and instructions on how to conduct clan diplomacy, Elinor was not sure if she would have time to catch her breath. But what she really needed to do more than any lesson her mother had in store for her was talk to McCameron Castle's newest patient. She had not had a chance to check in on Merida all morning, although she had been assured by Orla and Gavina that the girl was resting comfortably after being tended to by the physician. Elinor had no doubt that the McCameron physician had treated Merida's injury with the utmost care. She was sure to be healed and able to return to her home in no time, which was why Elinor needed to see her as soon as possible. "Are you listening to me?" Elinor snapped to attention. "Of course, Mother," she said. "What were you saying?" Her mother's lips thinned to the point of being non-existent. Elinor tried her best not to cower under her severe stare, but after a lifetime of being the recipient of such looks, adjusting her reaction to them was not easy. Queen Katerina remained silent, her nose pointed up in the air. "I'm sorry," Elinor finally said, knowing she would not be allowed to leave this room without issuing the apology her mother's expression demanded. She would do whatever was necessary to get her mother out of this room so that she could get to Merida. This young and brave Merida of Dunbrock, who knew how to kill a hare with a bow and arrow, how to skin it and cook it, would teach Elinor everything she needed to learn in order for her to escape the prison that was her life. She was a meticulous planner, and it wasn't until she observed Merida's makeshift camp in the woods that Elinor realized just how unprepared she was. She had calculated the amount of provisions she needed to pack, but what if she encountered a delay? She had no contingency if she were to run out of food. She had to be ready for anything if she wanted to make a successful escape. "May I be excused?" Elinor asked her mother. "I would like to check on Merida before dinner." "There are servants and a physician to check on that girl you brought here," her mother said. "You have more important things to do." "Can I not have a short break, Mother? I would like to make sure she is doing well. I found her, after all. I feel as though she is my responsibility." "Your responsibility is to your lessons and to your clan," her mother replied. "Yes, ma'am," Elinor said with a slight nod. A long, fraught silence stretched between them. Elinor knew it was yet another way for her mother to exert her control, the way she made her daughter sit under her intense scrutiny, daring her to move a single muscle. Elinor kept her entire body as rigid as possible. "You never explained exactly how you and that girl happened to cross paths," her mother said. Elinor went into more detail about her discovery of an injured Merida in the woods, embellishing some parts of the story and leaving out others. The queen's eyes narrowed. "I had better not learn that you were doing anything untoward, Elinor." "I would never consider it," Elinor said. "May I be excused?" she asked again. More silence. Finally, her mother said, "Go. but you will be tested on languages tomorrow. I expect your exemplary performance." Elinor nodded again, then pushed away from the table. She maintained a steady gait as she exited the library, holding her head up in the regal manner in which she had been taught, knowing her mother was observing her every step. The moment she crossed the threshold, Elinor picked up the pace, her excitement at the thought of making her plea to Merida spurring her forward. But that was not the only thing hastening her steps. She was running out of time. Her betrothal would be announced at the Highland Games. If she did not make her gateway before the announcement, it would only make it much harder for her to escape. Having the entirety of Clan McCameron on her heels was one thing, but once she was officially betrothed to Lachlan, the eldest son of the chieftain of Clan Fraser, both clans would consider themselves responsible for her, and Clan Fraser would see it as an affront if she were to leave after a pledged union was announced to one of their own. The potential implications of what would happen if her betrothal became official made Elinor's heart race. It was imperative that she leave before that happened. She lifted the hem of her kirtle as she ran up the stairs to the row of guest chambers. The girl had been placed in the one furthest from the family quarters, a standard practice at the castle. Precautions were taken to assure the safety of the king and queen, even from an injured slip of a girl who would be easily overcome by the many guards in the castle. "Oh, there you are, princess," she heard just as she approached the door to Merida's guest chamber. Elinor whirled around, her eyes bulging as Morag, her mother's longest-serving and most loyal maid, drew near. Elinor had to remind herself that she had no reason to feel guilty. No one in the household knew what she had planned to ask Merida. "Yes, Morag? Queen Katerina wanted me to remind you that you were to wear the sapphire gown tonight, so you should not eat anything else before dinner." Elinor did her best to keep her cynical reaction to herself. It was not as if they were having company tonight. Would it be the end of creation if she attended a simple dinner with her family dressed in a regular kirtle and not a confining gown? Her mother took her great pleasure in constantly reminding Elinor of the privilege she enjoyed, being the daughter of the king and queen of their kingdom. But Elinor often wondered what life would be like if she had been born to someone else. She would be glad to feed the hens or muck the horse stalls if it meant dining in a loose-fitting gown. Well, maybe not the horse stalls. Would you have Gavina ready the gown for tonight?" Elinor asked the maid. The woman nodded, then continued down the corridor. Elinor waited until she could no longer hear Morag's heavy footsteps, or those of anyone else, before entering Merida's chambers. She opened the door, and her heart dropped. The room was empty.